Clear prop.
Star 73, Yankee number 2, following twin traffic, 3 mile final, clear Pleasantville. 1 Charlie Bravo, exit in runway 25, going 4 mile final.
This is Behind the Prop with United Flight Systems owner and licensed pilot Bobby Doss and his co-host, Major Airline Captain and Designated Pilot Examiner Wally Mulhern. Now let's go Behind the Prop.
What's up, Wally?
Hey, Bobby, how are you?
I am fantastic as always. It's been a crazy few weeks for both of us. We've spent some time in Oshkosh. We've spent some time at the fly school. We've spent some time in the Top Hawk. By the way, how was the Top Hawk flight? Did y'all have fun?
Oh, it was great. It was great.
Well, what's it like to fly a brand new plane?
It's really nice. I mean, I've flown new jets, new 737s. I mean, when I say new, I say anything less than 60 days old. But yeah, I mean, it has that new car smell to it, and everything just works, and there's no creases on the checklist, and it's just kind of it is kind of fun to taxi out to the run-up area, and an airplane pulls up next to you, and they're pointing at you. You go, yep, it's a new airplane.
Well, we did have an episode not too long ago with one of the social media influencers from Houston, Fly with Kay, and she's posted a lot of the videos from what we did and my flights with her. And there's one reel or short or TikTok that she has where ATC asked us when we got on the ground. They said, "I'm not familiar with that tail number. Where's that plane coming from?" And I talk about it's a brand new plane, and the tower was like way impressed, right? So it's cool. It is a beautiful plane, but it also flies just like a 172, doesn't it?
It does. When you pull back, you go up, and when you push forward, you go down. When you push the throttle in, you go fast. When you pull the throttle out, you go slow. And we can talk about, well, that's really not the way it works, but in simple terms, we say throttle. When I talk to people about how airplanes work, visually, I'll kind of act like I'm pushing the throttle in and pulling the throttle out, and I say go fast, go slow, and you pull back on the yoke, and you say little house, and you push forward on the house, big house. So go fast, go slow, little house, big house.
Yep, and it works just the same, but the glass is crystal clear. As you mentioned, I think the coolest part is like the air vents are really stiff and the doors latch really easily. It's like everything's rigged 100%. So that's the recent times, and Oshkosh was great. Wally presented a couple times. I met a number of fans. My daughter was at the ForeFlight booth. It was really, really cool. First trip for me. Took all the famous pictures and got to see all the air show days, nights. It was a lot of fun. So maybe we'll see you there next year if you have a chance to go. But in recent times also, we've both had a number of solo conversations and solo activities that we just want to talk about. Pre-solo pitfalls and preparation. There is an unrealistic expectation, in my opinion, as a flight school owner and someone who's around this every day, all day, in the top of the summer in Houston, Texas, that people think they need to fly more to be able to solo. Where would you equate that, Wally? Is that the answer? If I fly more, I'm going to get to solo.
I've over the years, when I was coming up, it was a big deal to myself and my fellow, flight school students when you soloed. How many hours did you have when you solo? And we all knew what that number was. And as I'm now old and more mature, there's no correlation between when you solo and how good you are as a pilot. Absolutely none, zero. I'm not even sure what your original question was, but I know we're talking about people.
Do we fly more to solo, or do we learn more to solo? I think there's a correlation to
learn more,
the lack
definitely.
of learning that's occurring lately.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a lack of teaching. Again, I'm biased. I own a flight school, Maybe it is. Maybe we're not perfect. Maybe we're making mistakes. But I do believe that there's this mindset that, and I listened and was berated a little bit recently on the phone by some parents, and they said, the average should be 15 hours. And I'm like, no, there's no such thing. And that's really no such thing at Hooks Airport. And we can debate that. And I know where you learned, and you did a lot less than 15 hours, but I would bet Monroe, Louisiana is a little different than it was when you soloed there.
Absolutely. Yeah.
A little bit more busy, a little bit more traffic. Probably not the same radio conversations that were going on 40 years ago, but I just think that we put ourselves in a box when we think we should be done at 15 hours and then just gravitate towards, well, this was 16 hours. That was 17 hours. That was the 18th hour. Very few people want to talk to me about, do you understand everything you need to do to solo? And that's a big, big, big bucket of information. And we want to just break down those pitfalls, try to help you if you're at a plateau to get through that plateau, and really how to prepare to solo without thinking about that it's just putting more hours on the plane. Because to me, it's two pieces. It's extremely expensive to fly the plane. And if you don't have the knowledge to go fly the plane to make learning occur, you're double wasting your money because you're not learning the knowledge, and you're definitely not getting any tactile skills better when you're not prepared to learn.
Yeah. I actually talked to a flight school owner today because I'm considering doing some training. I want to get a helicopter rating. And, he actually offered it. He said, well, you should solo probably around 20 hours is what he told me. Of course, I have zero helicopter time. I got about 28,000 hours of fixed wing time, which means, according to him, means nothing in a helicopter, absolutely nothing. So, now he was just throwing out an average there, but absolutely if I end up doing this, I'm not going to hold him to it or anything like that. If he doesn't think I'm ready, then I'm not ready.
And it goes back to, you're going to take a different approach because you have 28,000 hours. You're going to read the POH before you ever go to that first lesson. You're going to learn about the cyclic and everything that controls the up, down, right, left of that airplane. You've already touched rudder pedals 28,000 hours in your life. You know what the right one does and the left one does. So you have a different cadence, no doubt.
Right.
I think it's the internet that has created this problem. The internet says 15 hours. Wally might have done an 8 or 9 or 10 hours. It's not, you're not those people. It doesn't matter. We all can make money flying at the same, almost the exact same hour, 250 hours. So it doesn't matter. Worst case scenario, you might have a little bit of dual in your logbook. All the other hours are going to count. But I want you to I wish everyone could solo at 15 hours. It's never the flying skills. So we're going to talk about the pitfalls. And I think there's really 5 areas that are overlooked that are knowledge-based stuff that will make you a better flying pilot. And we're going to start with the regulations. Every person that wants to solo has to do this one thing, and it is passing, in America anyway, for the FAA, you have to pass a knowledge test that is not graded by a computer. It is just a pre-written, open book, pre-solo knowledge test. What you have to do is covered in the federal regulations under Part 61.87. You have to know those requirements that are mostly knowledge, right? Yes, there's some flying skills, but you give check rides all the time. How many people are in a private check ride that you think are 85% knowledgeable for a solo student in that oral exam? That's passing.
Yeah. No, I'd say a lot. I would say a lot. And I'll go back to say this, talking about when someone solos. I don't know how many private check rides I've given, but let's say 750 of the 1,300 maybe are private. I have never, ever looked at someone's logbook and said, 18.6 hours when they soloed. I've never done it. And to me, it means nothing. I watched a podcast the other day where they're talking to an examiner, and they asked this examiner if it's a red flag for him when someone comes in and has very low time. And he basically said yes. And I was kind of like, wow, I would say no. I mean, I try to go into these things objectively. If someone comes to me for a private pilot check ride with 40.6 hours, well, okay. As long as they meet the standard, they meet the standard.
Yeah, but there's so much information, and I think, and I see it, I think it's the norm. Whether it's hours, it's learning to land. It's what everybody wants to do. And in a recent conversation, a parent was telling me, you shouldn't make him do any more stalls. And I said, well, do you know what happens about 2 feet off the ground right before you land? And she said, no. And I said, well, the plane's probably going to stall. I mean, we're trying to get as slow as possible. And the bigger point is, what if he's not 2 or 3 feet off the ground? Let's say he's 50 feet off the ground and he's going too slow. We need to do something.
Now we got a problem.
We need to prepare for that. We need to understand power all the way in, clean those flaps up, carb heat off, do it in the right order. Don't do it in the wrong order. So there's so much information. And I think instructors in general want to see some consistency. So one good day, one bad day, one good day, one bad day. That makes it really hard to say you're solo ready. So regulations are key. All the knowledge is very important. Guys, girls, men, women, the books are more important than the tactile skill. It's my soapbox, but it's true, and you can do that on your own. The next piece is really, number 2 is airspace and radios. Another recent conversation, young man couldn't tell the instructor what runway was in use. And that just doesn't seem like a big deal to them and to the parents. Is that a big deal, Wally, at Hooks Airport?
Yeah, absolutely. Especially, when you got parallel runways, because maybe on a given day, maybe the main runway that we typically use at Hooks 17 right, maybe it's closed. And maybe the ATIS did say 17 left.
That's a big deal. And based on the school's rules, maybe you're not allowed to take off on that smaller runway. Right. What if the water runway's in use? There's a lot going on at Hooks. Even if it's just one runway, going from the north or going from the south is a really big deal. And if you can't listen to the radio and understand which direction you're supposed to take off in, that's a solo thing. And maybe, I always question, Wally, and I know we've done it, but are the CFIs leaving something out? I don't know. I don't think so. I just think it's common nature for them, and the students fall prey to letting them make all the decisions. Hey, we're walking out to the plane. Where am I taxiing? Oh, I'm turning, maybe we're helping too much sometimes, but at solo time, you're the solo occupant. You're the pilot in command. You have to decide, am I taking off on runway 17 right? Or am I taking off on 35 left? Am I taking off on something else? Is something closed? Today there was a NOTAM for mowing. Like, I just wonder if a student was going out there to solo, hopefully my school would never let them go if the big runway was closed, but if they were taxiing out there and they said 17 right's closed for mowing, what would they do?
Yeah.
There's no CFI there to ask.
Right. And I gave a check ride at your school yesterday, and that NOTAM was out yesterday, and it was supposed to start at 1400 local time, and kudos to my student or my applicant. We should have been back. Well, we were probably going to be back shortly after that time. On the way out to the airplane, he made a phone call to the tower and said, "Hey, I'm just checking on this NOTAM about the runway, the 17 right being closed." And they said, "Oh, it's been rescinded. It's going to be open all day today." And I said to him, "Hey, that's using your head. That was good.
That's great. That makes me a proud fly school owner."
Yeah.
The other pitfall from a knowledge perspective, I really do think it is systems. And we don't have to go through the electrical stuff or anything else, but There's so much going on. I always thought it was pretty stupid. I didn't know exactly how many inches the prop was because it probably wasn't that long anymore anyway. But the normal stuff, how fast should the plane be going? What is VX? What is VY? Performance charts, density, altitude. If my CFI is not there, I've got to know. And I've seen commercial pilots get stuck at airports that were too high where they couldn't take off. I think people think that'll never happen to them because we just hypothetically talk about it. But I have a handful of stories where people could not get off the ground and almost got hurt never getting off the ground because of density altitude. Yeah. If you don't know these things, if you don't understand these things, if you can't talk to them and calculate them on your own, you shouldn't be able to solo.
Yeah.
They're real. It's going to hurt you.
I've had situations where I couldn't get off the ground in a 727 because of density altitude down at Quito, Ecuador. It was okay. We got to use a different runway, but now if we use that different runway, we have a tailwind, but there's not a mountain at that other in front of the other runway, or you know what the temperature is, and it's 28, and at 27 we can go. So you're just waiting for the temperature to drop.
And he's speaking Celsius, everyone, if you didn't know. But yes, it's knowledge that is pertinent to being able to be pilot in command. That just kind of leads into number 4, which is weather. In general, weather's a big deal. This has been the craziest probably 4 or 5 days in Houston that I've seen in a long time. It was crystal clear at like 5 o'clock this afternoon, and at 5:10, you would have thought a hurricane was coming through here for a little bit. And then it didn't rain one drop at my house, which is like 3 miles away from the airport. Like crazy weather. And I can't even imagine being a solo student back in those days if a thunderstorm like that would have popped up around me.
Right.
Do I divert? Do I know where to land? Have I ever landed anywhere else? Like the chaos that could ensue because of some pop-up weather like that, we have to be better if we're going to be able to fly planes by ourselves.
Yeah, definitely.
And then like a far, far stretch, which we would never let it happen. But do you understand special VFR? Can you get yourself out of a bind if you're in a bind? I don't know how many students have done more than maybe an hour of hood time when they solo, right? What if fog rolled in? How would I get back? You're in the air. There's one thing that's guaranteed. You're going to come down out of the air at some point this day.
Yep.
And so there's so much that you need to have an understanding of. I would argue most of the students that I've met that weren't ready to solo probably could land the plane. They could probably fly the plane. There was something knowledge holding them back. And I just want my mission in life to be put the knowledge in everyone's head so that they have that knowledge, because it's not necessarily the stick and rudder skills. I think cloud clearances is something that I didn't think a lot about, but it bit me in the butt multiple times. I've probably told this story, but my dad lives in Brenham. It's about 35 minutes from here. I got in a plane with my golf clubs, headed toward Brenham multiple times, and had to stop and turn around and come back. What do you think the problem was? Do you think I couldn't fly the plane, Wally?
No. Weather.
A little bit of lack of planning, a little bit of clouds over there. And one time I came back and my instructor was like, "You're crazy. You could have gone. You were in Gulf airspace. You don't know the cloud separations?" Now, I'm a private pilot. I was working on my instrument rating. I'm like, oh, yeah, I guess I could have. And I was so worried about cloud separation. I just lost my brain and didn't know those rules. Man, if you're going to solo as a student pilot, you better know what Gulf is and Echo and Delta, and it's important stuff. And when I see students struggling in the halls and I ask a few questions like that and they just don't know it, I know I'm the fat old man intimidating them, but they should be able to know what the cloud separation is in Echo, in Delta, and in Gulf, day and night. They'll never fly at night as a solo student, but come on, you need to know these notes. These rules are important. And all the cheat sheets and all the triangles in the world aren't going to make you a safe pilot unless you understand it and know it.
Yeah, absolutely. There's an old saying, and I think I've said this on here before, that you'll hear people talk about a pilot, and they'll say, "Oh, he's a good stick," and what that means is he's got the instincts. He's a good stick and rudder pilot, and I kind of laugh about it because, in essence, to me, when I hear someone say, "Oh, he or she's a good stick," what that tells me is they're not very good on the knowledge stuff. I don't ever want someone to call me a good stick. I want someone to call me a good pilot.
Amen to that. And since you said it, I'll give a little plug to Apple TV. The TV show Stick, it's about golf. It's a really good show. So if you like golf, go check out Stick, the TV show. The third segment of our podcast today is the solo endorsements. I'll never forget walking into United Flight Systems when I was a solo student, ready to go, perfectly calm, beautiful day. Get to the dispatch station, and Gary, who's retired and still a good friend of mine, says, "Bobby, you can't go. Your 90-day endorsement is expired." And I'm like, "Well, just get Justin up here." "Well, Justin's off today." "What?" I had to go home, Wally. Very disappointing day. Who do you think was responsible? Who do you think I thought was responsible for that 90-day endorsement?
Well, I think you probably blamed it on Justin.
But I want to be PIC. I want to be pilot in command.
Right.
What do you tell every applicant when you give them that piece of paper that says they're a private pilot?
I'll say this is your license to learn, but you are now your PIC. And I say this so many times on a check ride. I get multiple questions on every check ride, and it's the same two questions. They will say to me, usually I'll hear them say, "Are you ready?" many times. And my response is always the same. My response is, "I was born ready." And they get a chuckle out of it. Then later on, we're getting ready to take off. They'll look over. They'll say, "Are you ready?" I'll say, "I was born ready." After about 3 or 4 times, they quit saying that. But the other thing is they'll look over at me and say, "What do you want me to do?" And I'll just look at them and I'll say, "You're the pilot."
And I bet there's a little bit of silence.
There is.
To my question, though, is when you give them the paper endorsement, you give them their certificate, and it's temporary for 120 days. What do you tell them? Don't worry about it. The FAA will solve that for you?
Right. I say, "Okay, here's your temporary certificate. This is good for 120 days, which it says right down there, and I point to where it says 120 days. I say you should get a permanent one in the mail in about 5 to 6 weeks. I said, what I would suggest is that you put an alert in your phone for 90 days from now, which is 3 months, and just put, if it's July 17th, put a note in there on October 17th that says pilot certificate. And so when you see that pop up in your calendar, that's a reminder. Have I gotten my permanent pilot certificate? If you have, you just delete it. If you haven't, it's time to call Airman Certification up in Oklahoma City, and they're great. They're excellent. And because there is probably a problem. Maybe it just got lost in the mail. Maybe there's a paperwork hang up. But there's probably an easily fixable solution. And working with the FAA, I would tell you, when you work with them and you've got a little problem and you give them 30 days notice, they're very happy to work with you. When you call them and say, "My temporary certificate expired 2 days ago, and I'm going on a trip tomorrow," maybe not so much.
Well, that's their fault, right? It's 122 days. I can go either way, right?
Yeah. Well, try that one. Try that out.
I ain't going. I'm not going at all. So when we talk about endorsements, there's really 3 endorsements that you must have if you want to go fly and you want to go fly cross country. And I don't know. I know it's the instructor's job to give them and to teach them and to put them in your logbook. But it really is the student's job, the pilot and command's job, to know whether or not they're legal. And we teach this really kind of on lesson 1, right? There's certain documents and things that I need. they kind of grow. But when you solo, I need a medical, but I need these endorsements. And I need that endorsement that says I have the knowledge. It's the knowledge. I've taken this pre-solo written test. It's an open book test. My instructors agreed that I have this knowledge and I can go solo. Then I've had the flight training. And if I've had that flight training and they endorse me, that's good for 90 days. I can't imagine there's a school out there that would let you solo every 90 days. That's a big gap in training time, but you legally can fly for 90 days. And what I think surprises everyone is the one-time approval for cross-country flights that they think it covers everything. Like you can go cross-country, but you need a day of cross-country. And that one kind of sneaks up and bites people, Wally. And it's important. And if anyone owned a flight school, they would understand how important it was, right? The weather's different. Yeah. The winds are different. Everything changes daily. In Houston, things change between 8 and 10, 10 and 2, and 2 and 6. It's 3 different seasons sometimes here. But you need to be endorsed to take that very specific flight if you're going to go cross-country. And it can't be any cross-country. It's got to be specific airports, and it's got to be specific altitudes. And your instructor, not necessarily your instructor, but instructor has to have a quick chat with you and understand that you know what you're doing and where you're going and how you planned it.
Yeah, and that's key. It doesn't have to be your main instructor because it just has to be an active CFI, a current CFI. And I gave many endorsements for other instructor students back in the day, and they did them for mine as well.
And it's normally a nothing burger for someone to give that endorsement, but it's kind of like taking a check ride. When they say, "Where are you going today?" and they go, "North." Well, which airport is that? Huntsville, maybe College Station. Well, that CFI is probably not going to endorse not their student, right? You need to understand. Right. You need to demonstrate your flight plan. If you say I'm going odd altitudes to the west, that's probably a problem. They're going to question you. They might not endorse you and say, "Let's go." You do thousands instead of thousands plus 500. That's probably a problem. It's just the little chinks in your armor of knowledge are going to be a problem, but you need to get that endorsement from an instructor.
Yeah.
All that said, it's a lot about knowledge and not so much about the skills, but you do have to be able to fly the plane. So if you can fly the plane, don't fault your instructor, don't fault your school. If you don't get endorsed because you don't have the knowledge, there's some knowledge we've passed on here, and we have a couple challenges. A couple weeks ago, we did a few challenges. We had a huge response. Many of you responded within an hour of the show being posted, and we are still going to do that drawing, and those people that get a T-shirt are going to find out about it. There's many of you that responded that didn't get a T-shirt. We're going to find a way to make this fun and create drawings and stuff, but let's have a little bit of an interactive quiz. If you solo, Wally, if you wanted to solo, rewind a long, long time ago, do you think you should understand what PAVE means?
Absolutely. And that's one of the few acronyms that I actually remember. It's only 4 letters, so I can remember that one.
And it's an acronym that should set you up for success, and it is a mnemonic. It's this thing that helps you understand whether or not you're ready to go, that you've kind of taken into account some things. If you know what PAVE is, you can send an email to bobby@behindtheprop.com, and I'll be happy to put you in the queue or in the drawing list. We'd like to know if you know what PAVE is. If you're a solo student, tell us a little story about your solo experience to this point and how important PAVE is to you. And then the next piece of that's probably a little bit more difficult, but what do you have to have? What kind of a clearance / conversation / what do you have to have as a solo student to fly into a Delta airspace? It's a loaded question, 2 parts, 2 T-shirts. We're going to do some drawings so that hopefully thousands of you respond and tell us your stories. But tell us a little bit about your solo story. Tell us a little bit about what your experience was during solo, if you're already done with all that, and then tell us what you have to have. It is a loaded question. To be able to fly into Delta airspace, I want to know visibility. I want to know clouds. I want to know documents. I want to know equipment. I want to know communication, clearance, whatever you think it has to be. I want to hear about it. And I want to know that you are solo ready and that you don't have any of these pitfalls. What else, Wally? Anything to wrap up with as we close?
Well, I just go back to my solo, and I remember it happened on December 7th, 1941 at 9:17 a.m., runway 4 in Monroe, Louisiana.
1941?
No, 81. I'm sorry. December 7th, 1941. That was another big historical moment in the United States. Sorry about that. It was 1981, December 7th, 1981, 9:17 a.m., runway 4, Tomahawk 2549 Alpha. I remember taking off and looking down to the right and just doing a mental calculation of how much fuel I had on board to know how long it was before I really had to land that airplane, because I thought, oh my God, I'm up here. It's all on me now. But I go back, I think of how unprepared I was for soloing. Because this stuff that we're talking about, it was different. It was just different. And boy, there's so much I don't know. I remember a couple years after that, soloing a student one time. This is kind of a little bit of a funny story, but he's up in the air, and I think he was in that same airplane, Tomahawk 2549 Alpha, and he was in the pattern, and for whatever reason, the tower wanted him to ident. And so the tower would say, Tomahawk 2549 Alpha, ident. And then you'd come back with Tomahawk 2549 Alpha. And then tower would say, Tomahawk 2549 Alpha, ident. And then he would say, Tomahawk 2549 Alpha. And I'm sitting there thinking, because I'm listening to it on the radio, and I'm thinking, he has no idea what he's talking about. So when tower would ask him to ident, he would give him his identification. And the controller said, son, there's a button on your transponder, and it says ident. I want you to push that button. And you hear him say, yes, sir. And then you hear the controller say, there you go. And my poor student, he came in and got out of the airplane. He was devastated. He thought his life was over, and he came out. He goes, "Oh, did you hear that?" I said, "Yeah, I heard that." I said, "Look, that's on me." I says, "That's just something that never came up, and so I didn't teach that to you. It's no big deal." But anyway,
well, if you have a funny story like that, send that to me as well. I'd like to know what you really didn't know when you soloed that you wish you would have known. And there's probably 100 buttons in every airplane that we didn't all understand when we first soloed. Part of this is learning and learning and learning. And some of it's learning to fly, some of it's book work, some of it's weather, some of it's other stuff. Every day, keep learning, be better pilots, and stay behind the prop.
Thanks for checking out the Behind the Prop podcast. Be sure to click subscribe and check us out online at BehindTheProp.com. Behind the Prop is recorded in Houston, Texas. Creator and host is Bobby Doss. Co-host is Wally Mulhern. The show is for entertainment purposes only and is not meant to replace actual flight instruction. Thanks for listening, and remember, fly safe.